folks, welcome to this week's Ag Report. So this week we're going to talk a little bit about fertilizer and the importance of that to agriculture. We've talked a little about the supply chain issues, getting parts, keeping equipment running, getting the things that we need to produce crops, take care of the livestock. And I know that by now, all of y'all have been to a store, whether it's a grocery store or trying to get things for your house or your automobiles, and you have either been told it's out of stock or it'll take about 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks to get, or maybe you've been to the grocery store and they do have some things, but you have noticed that the price has gone up and is not what you're used to paying for those food items that you're purchasing. And so, all of those things are going on. Food prices in the last year, between 7 and 9%, they have gone up on there. Now, it's kind of like a spokes on a wagon wheel. There's a whole lot of spokes that make that wheel go around of agriculture and that affect that price. And so I'm not going to even try and touch all of those spokes. But I wanted to just let y'all know and be aware of some major things that are going on that will have a direct effect on that price of products. These are things that are out of the farmer's control, out of the rancher's control. So don't think that your folks in agriculture are riding the price up, just trying to get more money for their things. They are certainly not. In honesty, they are just trying to hang on, keep the books balanced in the black, they hope, not in the red, but that is getting extremely difficult. So let me explain why that's getting extremely difficult. So fertilizer is a very important key to producing crops, to producing hay for livestock, for beef production, to producing forage like silage and things for dairy production for that milk. So as you can see, it touches all of your proteins, all of your things in agriculture somehow tie back to fertilizer. So right now, the average producer, farmer, feeds about 165 people. Okay. You may wonder, well, how do they do that? Well, fertilizer is a way that is done. Years ago, fertilizer kind of came into use maybe in the 1950s is when it started to show up kind of to be used. Before that, the average producer fed around 20 people, something like that. It wasn't very much. Those numbers have gone up because there's less producers. So fertilizer is kind of like gasoline in your car. Your car doesn't go very far or very fast without fertilizer. Without fertilizer, you're basically back to pedaling on a bicycle. Okay. You can still get somewhere, but you're not getting there very fast. Also, a lot of times producers, farmers, ranchers are criticized for taking things out of the soil. Well, fertilizer is the nutrients that we put back to balance out what we're taking out, what that crop is taking out for production and putting back, so that we are not taking from the land and leaving it worse than it was. We're leaving it as good or better than it was, okay? So fertilizer is a very important thing. Fertilizer has tripled 3 times, tripled in the last year. Depending on, there's different blends of fertilizer, you're looking at about $1,200 per ton for fertilizer now, if you can get it. And I'll expand on that a little bit more, but about $1,200 a ton. And you think, well, how much do you use? Okay. Depending on the crop that you are growing and your ground and that kind of stuff, around 500 to 600 pounds per acre. So 1/4 of a ton per acre. So you can see 1/4 of a ton per acre is quite expensive when you divide $1,200 a ton by 4. So anyways, that is making that production cost go through the roof. Now, at some point that's going to trickle and pass on to the consumers because the market just has to go up to cover those costs. There's no way about it. You can't produce things at a negative cost, at a loss. Now, I mentioned if you can get it, there's things going on. 80% of the phosphate fertilizer comes from Russia and Morocco. Okay. Well, you know that we have to compete on global markets. So there are laws and things put into effect to try and make it fair, because you know good and well that not all other countries pay their workers as good as they do in America. They don't treat their workers as good as they do in America. They don't have the EPA regulations that they do in America. So there has to be kind of a leveling of the playing field. Well, the company called Mosaic here in America filed a suit with the U.S. Department of Commerce, alleging that Russia and Morocco were unfairly subsidizing their fertilizer companies and shipping it over here cheaper than what America could provide it for. So the Department of Commerce put tariffs on Russia and Morocco. Well, that's with phosphate. Now, there's also a nitrogen-based fertilizer called UAN. CF Industries from America did the same thing with Russia and Trinidad. So now there are tariffs on those fertilizers. And from what the fertilizer companies have kind of said, what we've got on hand is kind of about all that we're going to get, because Russia has said, well, we're just not going to ship anymore then, because they don't want to pay those tariffs. Well, now that has created a shortage, and that is reddening the price up even further because of demand. Now, from my understanding, there are grower groups in America that are asking for these tariffs to be lifted, because the good that they might do is more detrimental to the ag industry in a whole, and to you, the consumer, because of the price. So there are folks that are assuming once it goes through the channels that it may be lifted by June. The fertilizer companies have said that, you know, what they're hearing is when those tariffs fall off, they'll ship some more stuff maybe in June. Well, the thing about that, at least for us in this part of Texas, our crops are pretty well done by June. They need to have their fertilizer put in January, February, or in April, May, something like that. Very little fertilizing goes on in June or later into the summer. So that kind of compounds things for this part of Texas in there. So like I say, I know that's what they call, you know, just high level, you know, information, looking down. It's not real detail, but it's just giving you an idea of what's going on, the struggles that your producers are having, because they're having to borrow 3 times the money to pay for this fertilizer for the same crop that they grew last year. So anyways, we're going to keep an eye on this. We hope that things kind of balance out, but that's one of those spokes in the wheel that's driving your food costs up almost 10% different this year from last year. So that's one of the reasons why. And again, your producers are kind of taking it on the nose, as you would say, because they have no control. If they want fertilizer to try and make a crop, they have to pay that price. So anyways, I hope that this kind of helps give you a little backstory to what's going on, to some of that stuff that you are seeing in the stores when you see those higher prices, or maybe even when you go to the local home goods store to try and get your fertilizer for your yard or your garden. Maybe you are noticing that, hey, a little sticker shock here from what I paid last year. That's some of the reason behind it. As always, if y'all have questions, shoot them into the Waxahachie Sun. we'll do our best to try and answer them and get you some, good factual information. Y'all take care now.